Hello, this is another video for Grapple Talk. This time we are doing ECW. Hear the wind, it is very windy today. So let's get into it. So ECW was based in Philadelphia. And today is and was operated by the parent company HHG Corporation. In 1992, Todd Gordon, as NWA's affiliate with the Eastern Championship Wrestling. The following year, in 1993, Paul Heyman took over creative of the promotion from Eddie Gilbert, and then it became Extreme Championship Wrestling. So obviously it was known for being hardcore wrestling, and it regularly used weapons such as chairs, tables, and fire, and it revolved around adult-themed stories. So through the hardcore style as its main focus, ECW did showcase various international styles that weren't usually seen in the US, ranging from Mexico to Japanese wrestling styles. In Heyman's direction of creative, he created new stars, established ECW's third major US promotion in the second half of the 1990s. So it was competing with WWE, then WWF at the time, and WCW. And it debuted in 1999 on national television. So then it became a weekly show on ECW on TNN. And then it held its final events in 2001, shortly before the parent company folded, when it was unable to secure a new national TV contract. So basically, WWE bought the assets of the company in 2003, following a One Night Stand success as a tribute show in 2005. WWE relaunched ECW, and it became the third brand in 2006, alongside Raw and SmackDown, and it was on Sci-Fi for 4 years until its final episode in 2010. So yes, the style and presentation. So it was a wrestling promotion in the 1980s and early 1990s. The style and presentation was towards creating mainstream audiences and families and casual fans. However, under the creative direction of Paul Heyman, ECW became Extreme Championship Wrestling in 1994. So it became grittier, countercultural, underground style presentation directly inspired by emerging cultural things like grunge music, hip hop, extreme sports. In contrast to the clean cut stuff like WWE were doing at the time in like the early 2000s and after the early 2000s, rather than being clean cut. So it wasn't like the superhero kind of thing like you would get in 2010's WWE was. So it was more adult orientated. It had violence, vulgar, like sexual centered, around anti-hero characters, and then it developed a niche. ECW was accentuated the ruckus atmosphere of its shows through chart music instead of using stock music. The performers in ECW would make their entrance accompanied by the music artists such as Metallica, Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, them kind of rappers and bands. So the concept of wrestling, hardcore wrestling, which is just objects used as weapons, did not originate with ECW, but it did popularise it. ECW did. Although hardcore wrestling became a calling card of the promotion, it did. ECW has been credited with helping introduce other professional wrestling styles such as Lucha Libre and Japanese style to America. So it did kind of make it more popular. in a way, like the Japanese style, because a lot of people didn't know about that, and most of the time in the US. So in 1989 to 1994, it was based in Philadelphia, as I've said, and it was under the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance, owned by Joel Goodhart in 1989. And in 1992, Goodhart sold his share of the company to his partner Todd Gordon, who created his own promotion from TWA's remnants, which that was Eastern Championship Wrestling. And then it wasn't a member of the NWA, though it joined the alliance in 1993 at the behest of its lead booker, Eddie Gilbert. Gilbert, through his position as lead booker of ECW, secured a television time on Sports Channel Philadelphia in April of 1993. After a falling out with Todd Gordon, Gilbert got replaced in September of 1993 by Paul Heyman, who was 28 at the time. Heyman, known in professional wrestling as Paul E. Dangerously, had been fired by WCW. His creative influence had immediate impact on ECW, and throughout 93 and into 94, the terms hardcore and extreme were increased, used in characterize both in-ring style and the general presentation of the promotion. Instead of relying on Jimmy Snuka, and former WWF star, and others from WWF, Heyman pivoted the promotion. It basically centered around local and upcoming talent such as Shane Douglas, Sabu, the Sandman, and Tommy Dreamer. In 94, ECW was proven to be the strongest member of the remains of the NWA. So it was decided by consensus between ECW and the rest of the NWA that ECW's main star, Shane Douglas, would win a tournament for the vacant NWA World Heavyweight Championship. But unknown to the NWA, ECW operators Todd Gordon and Paul Heyman had planned to use the occasion to publicly break from the NWA and relaunch ECW to be like this, to stand alone as its own entity. So Gordon and Heyman had lost their faith in the NWA to provide any value to them at all. Additionally, instead of offering mutual support and cooperation, other member promotions were undermining ECW's business and underhanded tactics, something Gordon and Heyman wanted revenge for. So the NWA World Title tournament held on 27th of August 1994. Douglas threw the title down upon winning and stated he did not want to be a champion of a dead promotion, and that he was dead 7 years ago. He then raised the Eastern Championship Wrestling belt and declared that it would be the World Heavyweight Championship, calling it the only real world title left in professional wrestling. So after this event, Paul Heyman in 1998 chat said the NWA was an old school when old school wasn't hip anymore, and that he wanted to set his own mark and break away from the pack, and he wanted to let the world know that they weren't just some independent promotion. So then the NWA Dennis Coralluzzo was interviewed after the event and declared Douglas would be the world champion of NWA whether he likes it or not, calling Douglas's actions a disgrace, and said he would move to have Douglas stripped of both NWA World Heavyweight Championship and ECW World Heavyweight Championship, as he was undeserving. Gordon made the following announcement the next ECW programming. So he's said, I listened with great interest as the representative of the NWA Board of Directors to take it upon himself to inform you that they have the power to force NWA Eastern Championship Wrestling not to recognise the franchise Shane Douglas as a World Heavyweight Champion. Well, as of noon today, I have folded NWA Championship Wrestling in a place that will be ECW Extreme Championship Wrestling, and we will recognise the franchise Shane Douglas is our World Heavyweight Champion, and we encourage any wrestler in the world today to come to ECW to challenge for that belt. So, Douglas metaphorically and literally casting down the NWA Gordon's subsequent renaming. And so basically that was considered a definitive moment in ECW, as not just an independent promotion, but as a prominent player. So in 1995 to 1999, a rapid growth of ECW and the pay-per-views. ECW's primary venue was the ECW Arena, and the former warehouse secluded under the section of the Interstate 95. So the seating was simple folding chairs and 4 sets of portable bleachers, which was unconventional, seeing reflected the gritty style of the promotion. It was from this venue that ECW's TV show, ECW Hardcore TV, was filmed for the broadcast on a Philadelphia local cable sports station on Tuesday evenings after Sports Channel Philadelphia went off the air in 1997. The show moved to WPPX TV, and at 61 it later moved from the former independent broadcast station in Philadelphia on either Friday or Saturday night at 1 a.m. or at 2 a.m. So the shows were also aired on MSG Network in New York City on Friday nights or early Saturday mornings at 2 a.m. due to the obscurity of the station and ECW itself, as well as the lack of FFC oversight at the late hour. Many times, violence and just general swearing and everything you wouldn't expect like you would expect late at night, were not cut out. So, not added out of any of these showings, along with any copyright music, all of the videos to that music. In 95, Todd Gordon sold Extreme Champion Wrestling to Paul Heyman, his head booker, trading as HHG Corporation. Afterward, Gordon remained ECW's figurehead commissioner. Years after being the ECW's commissioner, Gordon left ECW in 97. His absence was explained on air that he retired due to his family. Rumours circulated that he was fired by Heyman after a suspected locker room mole. So, the cross promotion between the WWF and the USWA. Vince McMahon first became aware of ECW while at the 1995 King of the Ring. ECW, it was in ECW's home base of Philadelphia during the match, Mabel and Savio Vega. The crowd suddenly started to chant ECW. And in 1996, at In Your House, it was again in Philadelphia. ECW stars Sandman and Tommy Dreamer, Paul Heyman and Taz were sitting down in the front row. And Sandman got involved in one match. He threw a beer at Savio Vega during his strap match with JBL, then known as Bradshaw. So Vince McMahon acknowledged ECW status as a local upcoming promotion on air. So the next night on Monday Night Raw in 1996, at the onset of the match, the Bonnie Donners versus the Bulldogs, the British Bulldog and Owen Hart, Bill Alfonso and Taz could be seen invading that program. So Taz and Alfonso were both successfully jumped. They both jumped the security rails, and Taz was prominently displayed in orange sign with black writing said Sabu fears Taz ECW. And in 1997, ECW invaded Raw, so they at the Manhattan Center. This was a storyline basically, so it was like plugged in the first ever pay per view and worked 3 matches in front of WWF audiences while McMahon called the action with both Jerry King Lawler and Paul Heyman. So there's a lot of at the time there was a lot of ECW fans in that one, and WWF wrestlers, when they would wrestle, the WWF wrestlers, they would chant boring whenever they felt like it was warranted basically, and likewise when the ECW performers arrived, they literally just cheered and popped for them. So they just so the invasion sparked an interpromotional feud between ECW and Lawler's USWA. So Lawler disparaged ECW on camera, and then he tried to convince some wrestlers like RVD and Sabu to join him in an anti-ECW crusade. Throughout 1997, ECWs appeared on USA television programs and vice versa. As part of the working relationship between ECW and WWF, a number of WWF contracted wrestlers to go over to ECW in 1997, such as Droz and Brackus. So they were gaining access to pay-per-views. So after 18 months, like with the pay-per-view providers, ECW broadcast their first pay-per-view wrestling card, Barely Legal, in 1997 on April 3rd. This highlighted by Terry Funk defeating Raven to win their championship, the ECW World Heavyweight Championship. So gaining access to pay-per-views was seen as internally and externally as a major milestone for the company. It gave them a major revenue to the company in addition to greatly expanding the size of the audience. So although Barely Legal was broadcasted from the ECW arena, they then transitioned to pay-per-view would see the ECW access to much larger venues. For example, the November to Remember 97 pay-per-view just months later saw 4,634 fans at the Golden Dome in Pennsylvania, and June 97, the company's WrestlePalooza 97 event featured Raven's final match before leaving for WCW. So Tommy Dreamer finally beat Raven in this match, and during Dreamer's celebration, Jerry Lawler along with Sabu and Rob Van Dam attacked Dreamer. They set up the match between Dreamer and Lawler at the pay-per-view in 97 Hardcore Heaven on the August 17th, which Dreamer won. ECW continued through 98 and early 99 the string of successful pay-per-views. So this next bit is 1999 to 2000. This was basically like talent departures on national television. So in 99, in August, ECW began to nationally broadcast themselves on TNN. Despite very limited advertising and minimal budgets and disputes with their network, ECW became TNN's highest rated show. So, and TNN's Friday night slot both in ratings and lineup. However, weeks up to the debuting, ECW was raided by WWF fans who hired Airway, reigning ECW champion Taz, as well as reigning ECW tag team champions, the Dudley Boys. Furthermore, in 2000, ECW heavyweight champion Mike Awesome jumped ship to WCW, moved completely unseen by ECW. So it has been said that Awesome refused to sign a new contract with ECW until Paul Heyman paid him any wages that he believed were overdue. There were rumours that WCW's Eric Bischoff wanted Awesome to drop the ECW World Heavyweight Champion belt in the trash, a bit like what Medusa had done. So, after Paul Heyman filed an injunction, WCW refrained from having Awesome appear on Nitro with the belt, but did acknowledge him as the champion. Eventually, a compromise was reached. Awesome, a WCW employee and reigning ECW World Heavyweight Champion, appeared in April 2000 ECW in Indiana, where he had lost the title to Taz, and he was working for the WWF. Taz would lose the title to Tommy Dreamer at CyberSlam 2000 to return to ECW's possession, ending what was considered to have been one of the more peculiar arrangements. So in 2000 to 2001, ECW does get cancelled. So by October 2000, ECW on TNN was cancelled. So the last episode of that was on 6th of October 2000. And then in favour of Raw is War, WWF's Raw is War moving to TNN. Paul Heyman believed that his inability to land another national television deal was the cause of ECW's demise. So he struggled for months after the cancellation, trying to secure a new national television deal. And on December 30th, 2000, ECW Hardcore TV aired for the last time on the 7th of 2001, January 7th, 2001. A broadcast of Guilty as Charged was ECW's last pay-per-view. And on 2001, show in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, would prove to be its final event of any kind. Living Dangerously was scheduled to air on March 11th, 2001. But because of the financial trouble, it was cancelled in February. Heyman could not get out of financial trouble. The pay-per-view distributors would not pay the money that was owed to ECW due to Paul Heyman not being able to sign with the TV network. So then ECW closed on April 4th, 2001. Heyman, who had become colour commentator for Raw War that February, placing Jerry Lawler, who quit in the WWF, had supposedly never told wrestlers that ECW was on its last legs and that was unable to pay them for a while. Heyman also noted years later that he had made an effort to put ECW on the USA Network, unsuccessfully, despite McMahon sent an email encouraging USA Network to add ECW. So ECW's assets were totaled at 1,300,885,500. Included in that number was 860. I don't know if I said that right. In accounts, so receivably owed to ECW by In-Demand Network. So, and the remaining can't say that word, man. The remaining stuff they had for the merchandise, that sounds bad, doesn't it? So that was like about $4 it says, and the liabilities of ECW total to over $8 million. So it was literally quite a lot. I think about 8 billion actually. Yeah, about 8 billion, I believe. I think that's 8. Yes, it was about 8 million. Maybe almost 9 million. I mean, so wrestlers and talent were listed with the amounts owed ranging from $2 for Sabu and Steve Corino to hundreds, and in some cases thousands of dollars. The highest amounts owed to talent were Rob Van Dam with 1,500, not 1,500, 150,000, Shane Douglas 145,000, Tommy Dreamer 100,000, Joey Styles about 50,000, Rhino 50,000, and then Francine 47,000. So many wrestlers moved to WWAS, WWE, XWF, Ring of Honor, and TNA, which were all formed after the end of ECW and WCW. So the invasion and actually, basically W buying it, because there's some of these words I can't really say. So if I do say something wrong, it's because I struggle saying some of the stuff. So, obviously, a few months after ECW had closed down, it did become part of WWE in the Invasion storyline in 2001. So, Heyman, who had been hired by WWF as a commentator while ECW was still in bankruptcy proceedings, joined several former ECW alumni as part of the WWE roster. So, and he claimed that he was bringing back ECW to participate in the invasion. So, but at the time, they were the ownership of ECW, and the use of its name on air was disputed, despite Heyman still technically owning ECW when he jumped ship to WWF. In addition, WWF faced legal action for the use of the song "This Is Extreme," which was eventually settled. So before Raw's War was over that evening, Heyman and Shane McMahon, who had kayfabe purchased WCW, revealed that they were in cahoots, and that Heyman sold ECW to Stephanie McMahon, forming the alliance, but that was all in kayfabe. So they formed that trying to wrestle power from Vince McMahon at the time. The original interprofessional feud devolved into another internal power struggle among the McMahon family. So there was the shift literally placed less focus on WCW and ECW wrestlers. In fact, the rare exploitations such as Van Dam and ECW alumni in the alliance were given even less focus than WCW performers. So that even the logo of WCW was representing the whole entire stable. The feud lasted 6 months, and it concluded to the WWF defeating the Alliance in 2001 when Kurt Angle attacked Stone Cold Steve Austin, allowing The Rock, who had himself gotten attacked by Chris Jericho during the match, to get the winning pinfall. So at the end of that whole entire thing, WWF won the victory of that storyline. So in 2003, WWE, they had purchased everything of ECW's assets. So they have the whole of the entire ECW's matches. But HHG would nominally remain active until it became defunct in 2007. So that was quite a lot of information about basically the whole demise of WCW. Oh, not WCW, ECW, sorry. So obviously, they've had reunions and revivals. Obviously, there's Rise and Fall of ECW documentary in 2004. So, when WWE bought the assets to ECW in 2003, they put together a DVD with all the library that they had, and it was released in 2004. So it was like a nearly 3-hour documentary of the whole entire company's history, and had discs featuring 7 matches from the promotion. The documentary proved that to be one of the most popular pieces of media ever produced by WWE. And in 2005, an unauthorized DVD, Forever Hardcore, was written. So this was like the response to the rise and fall of ECW. but this was like the ECW alumni who were not employed by WWE, and they were just saying what they had been, like, their side of the story, basically. And then they did 2005. They reintroduced ECW through the contents from ECW Library, a series of books, and they did ECW One Night Stand on June 12th of 2005, which featured ECW alumni. Shane McMahon had the idea on an online low-budget show, but asked television stations and pay-per-view producers, and they were interested in ECW. But due to the financial success of the production, WWE produced a second ECW One Night Stand in 2006, which served as a premiere show to relaunch the whole entire thing as a WWE brand. And on June 13th, Heyman, the former owner and newly appointed figurehead of ECW brand, recommissioned the ECW World Heavyweight Championship and awarded it to Ron Van Dam. And as a result of winning the WWE Championship at One Night Stand 2006 during the first few months on Sci-Fi, Paul Heyman was supervised by Vince McMahon, and the ECW brand initially retained many of its elements, but gradually over the following months they scaled back on behest of McMahon. So obviously they were less violent. So this caused a considerable discontent with Heyman, who walked off the project and left the WWE entirely for 6 years. This was in December 2006 he left, and WWE's ECW brand would continue to operate until 2010, when it became defunct and replaced with NXT. So they were a handful of WWE-produced events that formed the legacy of the original ECW. So other reunions was like Hardcore Homecoming. So that was the One Night Stand 2000 event, same weekend, at the ECW arena. So they had Shane Douglas, Cody Michaels, and Jeremy Borash. And the show featured former ECW performers that were not contracted at WWE. And then they had Hardcore Justice in TNA. So Tommy Dreamer debuted in 2010, and they did a stable called the EV 2.0, consisting of former ECW alumni. And then Dixie Carter agreed to give the stable their own reunion show called Hard Justice pay-per-view, and billed as the last ECW reunion show. Hardcore just aired on August 8, 2010. And then there was Extreme Rising. Shane Douglas led this project in 2012, and the concept was to produce the show in the style of ECW, and the feature new and upcoming talent rather than strictly an ECW alumni. And House of Hardcore in 2012, Dreamer founded HOH, and the wrestling promotion named after the ECW Wrestling School, and inspired by hardcore styles of wrestling. But he's done numerous events over the years, mainly in areas of where ECW held such as the ECW arena. So obviously it did have some controversies as well. I think, so it has been seen as a rebellious organisation, like push the envelope, as they say. Not only did it engage like a violent style, it was also dangerous. It was risky and had controversial angles. The culture within the company sometimes had a lot of controversy. So the Sandman crucifixion angle, that was part of a storyline between Raven and the Sandman. So Sandman was attacked by Raven's nest, which included Sandman's real-life wife and their young son Tyler, who was in the storyline had become devotees to Raven. So part of that attack was a wooden cross was brought to the ring, and then they crucified Sandman with it. And then they also had a big place in a crown made out of barbed wire on his head. This was obviously a directly copy, like trying to be like copying what Jesus had been through in the Bible, like an illusion. And then ECW's normally rowdy crowd was shocked by the Angle. But obviously, because it is very much someone's religion, that's what they believe in, that's what they read, that's what, like, because obviously, if that was another religion, that would have been, they wouldn't have done it, but it's very push the envelope kind of thing. So it has been seen as, so Raven had to make an out of character apology for that, and the footage of it was never aired on ECW television. And Kurt Angle, he was in attendance, and he left immediately due to his disgust of the incidents. So then the other high controversy one was mass transit incident. Now, a lot of people know about this one because he was 17 at the time and his name was Eric Kulas. Now, a lot of people know about this. It is talked about quite a lot. So, yeah, 17-year-old Eric Kulas, he wanted to be a wrestler. So he got into the ring and his name was Mass Transit, but he got seriously injured in a tag team match against the Gangsters. It's because he had asked at the time New Jack to blade him. This is what New Jack has said. And he had severed his arteries. Further controversy arose when it came out that Kulas had lied about his age, because he had said that he was of legal age to be wrestling, really. So this led to a temporary cancellation of ECW's pay-per-view Very Legal and legal action against New Jack. Due to Kulas' deception, however, Barely Legal reinstated and legal action ended in New Jack's favour. So in 2000, ECW made its West Coast debut, and this is like so yes, this was the Heat Wave in Los Angeles, California, and an XPW, a recently established promotion which imitated the style and position of ECW. 6 members of XPW's roster had purchased front row tickets and attended the show prior to the start of the main events. An out of character brawl broke out between XPW and members of ECW, which spilled out the parking lot of the venue. And although ECW and XPW organizations they were considered to have dislike for each other, several ECW talents would perform at XPW's following the fall of ECW. And then, obviously, the legacy of it is quite influential, especially in like the 1990s, and then with the immediate aftermath of the ECW collapse, most of the active roster were brought into the WWF. These former ECW talents were used part of the storyline, but obviously still a lot of people still talk about ECW today. And I think, like, because obviously WWE have gone to where ECW is famous. So, but ECW, the former ECW arena, known as the 2,300 Arena, is hosted Hardcore Hall of Fame, and which recognises the history of the hardcore wrestling. So yeah, so after the relaunch of WCW brand, it initially shifted from a focus of original Lamite to new and upcoming talent, and it was in WWE. So obviously it had its own championships and all that, but yeah, I quite like. I never really I wasn't really born when ECW was around, because it closed before I was born. I was born in 2002, so obviously I wasn't really around, but I know the history of it, like a bit of it, and I've watched the brand with the rebrand, and I've watched clips of the Alliance. Obviously, with it being like very controversial, Paul Heyman not being able to pay people, like you get loads of stories about what happened in ECW. I would love to have been around when it was like a company. But yeah, if you watch this, put your comments on what you think, because obviously I don't really have much of an opinion on it because I've never really seen it. I wasn't around. But yeah, if you just comment what you think,